Welcome to the NCSL webinar, Results and Evidence in Criminal Justice Policy, Tools and Resources. My name is Vicki McFerrin, and I will be moderating this webinar over the next hour. NCSL thanks the Bureau of Justice Assistance in the Office of Justice Programs, U.S. Department of Justice, for partnering with us on this webinar. The NCSL Criminal Justice Program has an ongoing partnership with BJA that focuses on state legislative interests in effective sentencing, corrections, and reentry policies. Good research and evidence is the foundation for many effective criminal justice policies. Increasingly, lawmakers use data to inform their policy decisions and require corrections programs to have evidence that they work to protect public policy and reduce crime. This webinar will provide an overview of state laws and approaches that support results and evidence-based policies. It also will cover how to use Crimesolutions.gov, a resource for finding information about effective criminal justice programs, and it will preview the Office of Justice Programs' new Diagnostic Center. Our presenters today are Alison Thorns from the National Conference of State Legislatures, Dr. Phelan Wyrick, and Amy Stops from the Office of Justice Programs, Department of Justice. Together, the presentations will take about 45 minutes and will be followed by a question and answer period. You are welcome to submit written questions at any point throughout the presentations using the chat box. We will get to as many questions as possible during the Q&A time, and we'll follow up on other legislative questions after the program. An archive of this program, including PowerPoint slides and links to resources mentioned in the presentation, will be made available on NCSL's website in about 1 week. Our first presenter, Alison Thorns, is a policy specialist in NCSL's Criminal Justice Program and works on issues related to sentencing and corrections.
Thanks, Vicki. Lawmakers are interested in what sorts of corrections programs and policies work best to reduce crime, recidivism, and victimization, and how they impact prison populations and costs. Around the country, results and evidence are increasingly being used to inform policy and budget-making processes. Today, you are going to hear about an online tool, Crimesolutions.gov, created by the Office of Justice Programs to provide access to information such as recidivism and costs on the effectiveness of criminal justice programs. But first, I'm going to describe a few of the ways that legislatures are using data like what is available on Crimesolutions.gov to create policy. Lawmakers are requiring that state-funded corrections programs and supervision have evidence that they work to protect public safety and reduce recidivism. In 2003, the Oregon Legislative Assembly required the Department of Corrections to begin a graduated implementation of evidence-based offender programming. Programs included were substance abuse and mental health treatment, cognitive behavioral classes, and treatment programs, both in prison and on community supervision. Under the law, 25% of all programs were to be evidence-based by the 2005 biennium, 50% by the 2007 biennium, and 75% by 2009-2010. The Oregon Department of Corrections has been successful in achieving these statutorily set goals. Compliance is considered by the legislature during the appropriations process. More recently, Illinois and Kentucky have adopted similar graduated implementation measures. These laws also require implementation of certain evidence-based practices, like the use of risk assessments to determine supervision plans and a system of graduated sanctions for probation and parole violations. States are also providing funding and other assistance to local supervision agencies for implementation of evidence-based practices. Known as incentive funding, the goal of these state-local partnerships is to successfully supervise offenders in the community rather than sending them to prison for probation and parole violations. In 2009, California lawmakers allocated a portion of one-time federal stimulus funds to county probation departments to support the implementation of supervision strategies and treatment programs that are designed to reduce probation revocations to prison. Going forward, counties are eligible to receive a portion of the state savings from a reduction in prison admissions. The amount of funding a county receives is dependent upon the rate of decline in revocations. During the first year of implementation, probation revocations decreased by 23% statewide, which resulted in $179 million in savings to the state. $87.5 million of that was allocated to local agencies for continued development and implementation of evidence-based practices. Substance abuse and treatment among criminal justice populations is an area rich with research. Many states are addressing the drug-crime connection with policies that divert appropriate offenders from prison into community-based treatment programs. Colorado is a prime example. In recent years, the Interbranch Colorado Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice has drawn from state and national research to develop and make recommendations on effective interventions for drug-addicted offenders. Many of these recommendations have been adopted by the General Assembly, resulting in decreased penalties for drug crimes, expanded eligibility for community-based programs, and increased funding for effective substance abuse treatment. Justice reinvestment isn't a particular policy. Rather, it is a data-driven approach to policy making that is used by states across the country. This approach involves 4 steps: collecting and analyzing criminal justice data and trends related to jail and prison populations, developing and adopting policies that manage existing resources and generate savings without compromising public safety, reinvesting a portion of the savings into criminal justice programs that reduce recidivism and prevent crime, and measuring the fiscal and criminal justice effects of these reforms to ensure that projected results and benefits are achieved. This approach is helping states to manage prison growth and costs, generate savings, increase the effectiveness of public spending, and improve offender outcomes. A number of state justice reinvestment efforts are supported by national assistance and expertise. For more information on justice reinvestment and the data-driven policies I discussed today, check out the NCSL publication, Principles of Effective Sentencing and Corrections Policy. It's available on our website and will be posted to the webinar archives page. For a hard copy, please contact me. I will be happy to answer any questions at the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Now we will hear from Dr. Phelan Wyrick, and a Senior Advisor to the Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Justice Programs. Dr. Wyrick is the Department Co-Chair for the Defending Childhood Initiative and leads OJP's Evidence Integration Initiative. And Amy Staub, Policy Advisor to the Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Justice Programs, is working on their Evidence Integration Initiative.
Hello, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be part of this webinar and to share with you information about the Crimesolutions.gov website. This is a resource that we developed out of the Department of Justice in last year in June 2011. And we're nearing our 1-year anniversary. And we put this together for the purpose of making sure that practitioners and policymakers all across the country would have access to information about evidence-based programs as it applies across criminal justice, juvenile justice, and victim services. And I want to say, before I describe in detail the website, I want to say that we came to this with an eye towards how we could increase the use of evidence and evidence-based programs across government and how we could inform policy as it relates to the justice field. And I want to underscore that we take an approach that involves integrating evidence into decision-making. And so that would include integrating experience, expertise, and judgment with the best available external evidence from systematic research. We think that this website should help folks to better access information, better understand the evidence that's available to people, and make better decisions in the field and for the purposes of legislatures to inform funding as well. So our users are really broadly practitioners and policymakers first and foremost. And that is much of what informed our development, our website development, and the way we built our interface so that people could easily access information and understand the information we were presenting, whether or not they had a research background. So you see the list here that includes mayors, chiefs of police, state administrating agency representatives, congressional staff, so on. Researchers and academics are on the list, but they're really at the bottom of the list because the evidence that exists out there in the world is already really built, is written by and written for mostly researchers and academics. So our role in the Office of Justice Programs was largely how can we present this information in a useful format. We review programs that have been subjected to program evaluation, and they have research that speaks to the program effectiveness. We have a number of expert reviewers that we use, actually over 50, that have been trained and certified using a systematic approach to look at the available evidence for programs in these fields and rate them based on the quality of the evaluation design itself and the quality of the outcomes. And we present that information in three categories that we hope are easily understandable. And those categories are on your screen: effective, promising, and no effect. I want to say quickly about effective and promising. Pretty obvious why we would have those. We want folks to have a sense for what works in the field. Those programs that are rated effective typically have a strong evidence base, and they've shown that they can accomplish their intended outcomes under the testing conditions. The promising programs usually have shown evidence of effectiveness in achieving their intended outcomes, but the quality of the evaluation design is not quite as strong. So our confidence level in the results is a little lower. So we say that these programs are promising. Ideally, they would be subjected to additional research, and we are also in the business of trying to increase that evidence base and improve the research behind programs. But in the meantime, because there's a lot of areas where there are not a sufficient number of programs that have been fully evaluated to the effective level, we present that information about promising programs to really help those practitioners who are out there day-to-day making decisions about how to best respond to the challenges that they face. The third category of no effect was one that we faced questions, frankly, when we were designing this. People asked us, well, why would you put information up on your website about programs with no effect? And it was really folks at the state level. In fact, the state administering agencies were one of the vocal groups who said to us, it's very important for us to have an objective, non-biased resource at our fingertips that would tell us about and provide information about programs that have been demonstrated not to work. And the no effects category includes both those programs that did not achieve their results, but also those programs that had negative results. They sometimes are referred to as backfires, and they can do more harm than good. So we include both of those in our negative effects category, and that was really through popular demand. So when you go to Crime Solutions, what we're hopeful is that people will identify programs that are effective or promising that they'll want to replicate. That's sort of the most common use and the thing that people think about most. Ideally, you replicate these programs in as close in conditions, and you implement the programs as close to the way they were implemented in the original testing environment as possible. But the fact of the matter is that sometimes localities or states or agencies are in the position where they simply can't replicate it with full fidelity to the original model. So they're forced to adapt it in some way. A lot of the purists will tell you that, this is a really dangerous thing to do, but I think it's actually a very common thing, and we have to recognize that it's better to be working off of a framework that has some evidence behind it than to just be making it up as you go. So what we recommend, and we're continuing to develop and distribute guidance on how to do this kind of work, but it's very important for folks to really understand the conceptual framework and the design of the programs that they're looking to adapt, and understand why the programs are built the way they are, and because it has, there are certain modifications that you might want to make because you're forced to. Say you're going to implement the program with a different type of population in a rural setting versus an urban setting, for example, with females versus a program that was tested with males. To make those kind of changes should be done very carefully, and folks should be encouraged and supported in their efforts to assess or evaluate the adaptation as well. So we all recognize that this is a difficult budget time, and economic incentives also drive the importance of doing this work. So we're hoping to increase the use of evidence-based programs, inform policymakers and practitioners, and help inform decisions during these economic times. We've got a broad scope of topics that we cover under Crimesolutions.gov, and you'll see them listed here. But as I mentioned at the outset, it's really across criminal justice, juvenile justice, and victim services. We have certain standards and basic criteria that we use to screen programs before they come into Crime Solutions, and you'll see them here. They're also articulated on the website. By the way, the name of the website is also the URL, so if you're multitasking right now, you could be pulling up the website as you're listening to me and browsing through it. We are looking at programs that aim to reduce crime, delinquency, or related problem behaviors, prevent, intervene, or respond to victimization, improve justice systems or processes, or target offender populations or at-risk populations. We have tried to establish a high standard of scientific rigor for the programs and the quality of evaluations that we review. Programs must be evaluated with at least one quasi-experimental design or with a true experimental design. And for those who are particularly research inclined, you can go into the tab on the website called About Crimesolutions.gov. It'll give you a lot more details about our rating criteria, how we score programs, and but we wanted to let you know that we have established a high level of rigor. We're looking at evaluations that assess one or more outcomes related to crime and delinquency or victimization, and we're looking at studies that were done after 1980. Our program review and rating process begins with a preliminary identification, initial program screening. We do a literature search, so someone might, for example, suggest to us a program to put on Crime Solutions. They can be nominated through the website, or we might find them through our sort of ongoing search process. Whenever we find a program with evaluation evidence, we make sure to do the full literature search behind it to make sure that if there are additional evaluations, we're aware of them. We do an initial evidence screening to look at the quality of the design and the outcomes that appear to be demonstrated through the evaluation. And then we send it out for evidence for the expert review. And that goes to a subject matter expert in each of the primary areas of interest. And then that subject matter expert, after their review, will send it to 2 independent certified and trained peer reviewers who are also subject matter experts, all PhD level. They do independent reviews and, through a systematic process, rate a series of criteria related to each program. And then through that process, they'll classify the study into one of the categories that, or classify the study, and then if there's multiple studies, they combine to classify into a program evidence rating, which would be effective, promising, or no effects. This is a website. This is a this is a screenshot of the front page of the website. It's this is a website that grows certainly weekly, if not almost daily. So there's new stuff that appears on the website all the time in terms of announcements and so on. But we tried to be very clear to our purpose of Crimesolutions.gov. It's not a place where we advertise new funding opportunities. We don't get in there and talk about training. It's all about evidence-based programs. And so you'll see information here about research and evidence, and that's pretty much it. There's multiple ways to search the website, and I'll get into those in just a minute. Why don't we click forward? And you can do a keyword search. It's right at the top of that home page. There's a keyword search that you can just enter any term just like you would in Google. You can browse by topic, and that's on the top left corner. You can look down the topic. You can do advanced search. This is the kind of search that will allow you to say, well, I'm looking specifically for programs. I'll just pull a random example out of my head here. Specifically for a program that works with middle school kids in an urban environment, et cetera. And you can search that way, or you can just list the whole list of programs and identify one that suits your needs. Go ahead. As I mentioned, this gets updated on a daily basis. If you are looking at the website right now, or if you decide to log on and look at it later today, you'll see that actually the number of program records up as of today is 190. But when we sent the slides in just a couple of days ago, it was 189. So what that means is we've got 190 programs that we've run through this full evidence review process and fall into one of these three categories. Once you find a program that you're particularly interested in, you can drill down into it and get a summary of the program itself. It includes a program description, outcomes, methodology, if we have cost information, implementation information, evidence reviewed, and the additional references. So that'll tell you what sources of evidence did we use to make our decisions, and what additional sources did we look at. Also, you'll find information in there, contact information for program developers, contact information for researchers and who did the work, et cetera. So we're going to show you a few screenshots of just an example, one of our program profiles. In this case, drug treatment alternatives to prison. This is a promising program. You can see at the top of the page, it's got that yellow icon. And I'll point out that the icons, there's actually 6 icons. One of them for each of effective, promising, and no effect. But in this case, you'll see the icon almost looks like it's got a little fan to it. And what that means is that there's multiple studies behind this evidence rating. And many people are interested to know that, and so we decided to convey it very clearly with an icon. So you can see the program description. On the right-hand side, you can also see the program snapshot, which is this column of information that includes the, just very quick summary information about the age range of the target population, ethnicity, setting, and so on. So as we go down the program profile, you'll see more information about the program description, and you can see that the column on the right continues down as well, with more information about contact people for this particular program. There's subheadings within the program description that includes target population, services provided, key personnel. What I've done below that is you'll see underneath that in a program profile, you'll see a number of sort of expandable categories. And this is one of them, evaluation method. There's evaluation outcomes, and there's evaluation methodology. Could you go up one? Do we have one more? Yeah, evaluation outcomes is the first one you'll see. And it'll show you, what were the findings. And we try to present this in a pretty quick, easy to digest summary fashion. But it tells you very clearly, how did this affect rearrest, how did it affect overall recidivism, and so on. Now, the that some of us who are particularly research inclined will want to know is, well, let me see more clearly what the evaluation methodology was. And that information is available to you here. We have cost information. I must say that cost information is not available for every program. There's a lot of evaluations that are done that don't have cost information available, but where we do have it, we do make it available. Other expanding categories below that include the evidence base, and you'll see the citation for the studies that were conducted. In the cases where the study is available, public access online, we'll go ahead and have the link right there so people can click to it. But as many of you probably know, a lot of these studies are published in academic journals, and part of the reason they're hard for practitioners to access in the first place is because these academic journals are difficult to access, and they're copyrighted, and you can't just reproduce them online. And in this case, we have how the additional references appear. In this case, there's additional resources for this particular program. And so that's kind of the end of our crime solutions portion of the presentation. But before I turn it over to Amy, who's going to share with you a little more information about another resource we have coming up called the Diagnostic Center, I just want to say that, Crime Solutions is it's an excellent resource, we think, for the field. We've gotten strong feedback from it, feedback about it from many people out in the field. But just to recognize that it's not the end. One of the cautions I always share with people is that, first of all, it's very important for us to continue to develop our evidence base. And Crime Solutions doesn't have every single program that's ever been evaluated. We continue to build our evidence base specifically because there's a lot of research out there that we still haven't gotten to yet. But we didn't want to wait until and develop this over many more years until we began to share the information. So we've been trying to continue to work through the evidence base and get programs up. But again, I just want to underscore that there's a lot of things that you may fund out of state legislatures that don't necessarily appear in this website. That doesn't mean that they're bad or they don't work. We have to take a careful look. The Crime Solutions is intended to really inform decision-making, but it's not intended to replace decision-making. The evidence-based movement is not about looking backwards and always looking back at what we've done in the past and saying that's all that works. It has to be more of a living effort and a forward-looking effort. And it has to include the recognition that we're going to continue to develop new programs. We're going to have to continue to innovate. And we're going to have to continue to test programs as well. So with that in mind, I'll turn over to Amy Staubs, who will talk a little bit more about Diagnostic Center.
Thank you, Phelan. As Phelan described, the Crimesolutions.gov is a wonderful resource that is sort of a self-service resource for communities that have some sense of the problems that they might want to address, that they can do that search and find relevant programs that are working with the issue and the population that might be something that they could replicate within their communities. As part of the Evidence Integration Initiative, our goals also include helping translate that evidence into practice, and the Diagnostic Center is a technical assistance vehicle in order to help communities, support communities in identifying appropriate evidence-based programs to attempt to put in place in their communities, as well as providing that sort of technical support in order to train staff and implement those practices as intended with fidelity in their communities. So we see these two initiatives, Crime Solutions and the Diagnostic Center, as working together to support that translation of evidence into practice in the communities. So the Diagnostic Center is a unique training and technical assistance tool for the Office of Justice Programs. Because of our defining characteristic being a diagnostic approach in communities. It is working with communities that may not have a sense of what the contributing factors are to
sudden increase of crime or a prolonged crime problem within their community. And so it is a support to help communities to identify the stakeholders, to gather data, to help gauge the scope of the challenges faced and recognize those trends in order to help the communities figure out what those contributing factors to that crime or public safety issue might be, in order to then map those challenges to the appropriate to an appropriate evidence-based practice that might be implemented within the community. And so while this is a type of technical assistance that the bureaus and offices within OJP are occasionally able to do, this is a standard defining characteristic of the Diagnostic Center. In any engagement that we're working with communities, we see the Diagnostic Center specialists working with communities to go into that digging deep and looking at the data within the community in order to identify what are the issues that may be contributing to the problem. So our process includes a request coming from a community leader, someone who has the authority to bring together those stakeholders, as well as the ability to implement change in policy and practice within that jurisdiction. Requests may come to us directly from communities, from community leaders, as well as through referrals from our other training and technical assistance programs across the Office of Justice programs. So you may send in a request to BJA or OJJDP that is a little bit beyond the scope of what they typically would be able to address, or may overlap audiences, so that you may be looking at drug treatment programs that looking at both reentry issues for adult or juvenile audiences. There's overlap the scope of BJA and OJJDP. So the Diagnostic Center would be able to assist in kind of overlapping and coordinating DOJ resources to address that issue. Our Diagnostic Center staff would help the requesting agency identify what sources of data are available in the community that would help identify the strengths and challenges that are being addressed, and perhaps help the community identify additional data points that would be useful in diagnosing the contributing factors to the crime or public safety concern. Next, the Diagnostic Center staff would help map those challenges and the outcome measures that are of greatest importance to the community to evidence-based programs and practices that are demonstrated to achieve those positive results that the community wishes to see. Then the Diagnostic Center would be able to assist the community in implementation and evaluation of that evidence-based program, and supporting the long-term data collection analysis, again, to collect that information about whether or not we achieved the positive results that were desired. And this also helps us in the long term add to the evidence base. The Diagnostic Center launched officially in April of this year. We are in our pilot phase, looking at taking on and reviewing 6 to 12 cases or technical assistance requests during this time period. We are currently engaged with 3 communities in the currently in the diagnostic process. Between now and September, we see a total of probably a dozen communities that we'll be working with during this time. We're developing our technical assistance protocols and processes for receiving requests and referrals from other agencies or bureaus within the Office of Justice Programs and the Justice Department as well. And at this point, we're doing some limited marketing. Again, most of our requests at this point have been coming through referrals after we've done briefings with our colleagues across OJP, identifying these types of technical assistance requests that from the outset, it's very clear that the communities are interested in evidence-based practices and identifying that need for some sort of diagnostic approach on the front end. We anticipate doing very broad marketing by September 2012 in order to increase the number of technical assistance responses each year. And in fiscal year 13, we anticipate going to 75 to 100 communities that we would be responding to technical assistance requests. And that may be working with them from the diagnostic phase through implementation and evaluation, and in other communities, it may be focusing on that diagnostic approach, just the diagnostic phase, in order for them to identify what strategies they would like to implement in their communities. We work with both local communities as well as state. We will be, whenever we're interacting with communities, we will be reaching out to the U.S. Attorney's Office and the law enforcement coordinators within the U.S. Attorney's offices, as well as the state administrating agencies, in order to make sure that we're coordinating as best we can the resources that are going in and supporting the efforts, the public safety efforts within that community. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Vicki and any questions that might be in regarding the Crimesolutions.gov or the OJT Diagnostic Center.
Thank you, Dr. Wyrick and Ms. Pfadt. We now have about 15 minutes for questions. If you'd like to ask a question of our speakers, please submit it in the chat box on your screen. We do have a question here for Dr. Wyrick. Do you recommend looking at promising as well as effective approaches on the website? For example, does information on promising get updated to effective or no results?
That's a good question. Promising is really in the direction of effective, but the difference really is the level of rigor of the evaluation. One sort of observation that researchers have made is that as the evaluations get more and more rigorous, fewer and fewer programs end up showing the same outcomes. So what you see in the promising category, the way I would use promising, I would use both of these categories in a number of ways. First of all, if I'm working in an area, if I'm working in the area of corrections, I'd probably go ahead and pull up all the promising, all the effective, and all the no-effects corrections programs and just read through them and just familiarize myself with them. Because there's a lot of common themes and threads you'll start to see in the practices that they're using. And I think it would inform any professional about how to do their job a little better just by being aware of it. But in terms of replicating programs, it's as you might expect. Your best bets are with the programs that have been rated effective, but there are some problems and challenges for which we simply don't have well-designed programs that have been evaluated with the level of rigor required to get an effective rating. And so I would still approach and look at those promising programs. You need to use a little more caution, but in all of these cases, you've got to be an educated consumer. You've got to look at information, even going beyond what's on Crime Solutions. But Crime Solutions gives you an easy and effective and rigorous way to begin to sort through the broad amount of information that's out there, and to begin to really narrow your search. So I would certainly consider those promising programs, but I would look to what specific populations, what specific design is there, and I would remember that even an effective program, it's very important to implement it well, because poor implementation can ruin the outcomes for any program.
Thank you, Dr. Wyrick. Our next question is for Amy Staub. Can you tell us more about assistance of the Diagnostic Center in collecting long-term data? Legislatures often want but don't have access to long-term data, so this is a real need.
Oh, certainly. Through our process in working with communities, we realize that many agencies that are working to address crime problems, public safety problems, may not have existing relationships with researchers. And so if that is a need that is identified through the diagnostic process, we have the ability to support consulting agreements through our contractor that would be able to engage a researcher at a local university that would be able to support data collection for baseline information, as well as through implementation and beyond implementation, in order to gather information about effectiveness and I think some of the fidelity issues that Phelan was talking about as far as the importance in implementing a program in order to achieve those desired results that had been seen in other areas. And so that is one piece of what we see as a potential TA strategy, where after identifying the root causes, the contributing factors to a problem, and mapping those to strategies, could provide the technical assistance, including training for staff, multidisciplinary teams who may have unique roles in implementation of a specific program. Can provide support as far as facilitating stakeholder meetings, so that everyone in the community that is supporting the implementation of the program has an understanding of and solid expectations of how it should be implemented and understand their role, as well as those support functions as far as that data collection piece, pre and post implementation.
And this is, I just add on that one of the things that the Diagnostic Center cannot do, though, is to sort of take over basic statistical collection functions for states or localities over the long haul. I mean, so Amy's described a level of diagnostic support that would be in relation to addressing a specific challenge or problem over a defined period of time. But for legislators, I know you folks are commonly in the position you're trying to get information on a more ongoing basis. So I just wanted to be clear that Diagnostic Center doesn't necessarily pick up those kind of functions at the state or local level over the long term.
Okay, well, thank you both for that. This next question is for Dr. Wyrick. Does Crimesolutions.gov include meta-analysis, not just individual programs?
Yes, it does. It does reference meta-analysis now, but we're actually developing a new module that we're going to be releasing in the fall. Such a great opportunity to promote and plug our upcoming release. What we're planning to do is, because there's a lot of meta-analysis out there that, for those who might not know, meta-analysis really is a quantitative and systematic way of bringing together results from many program evaluations and providing information about average effect sizes and related kind of metrics. So meta-analysis is a really valuable tool to understanding whether programs work. Right now, we do address meta-analysis to some extent, but I think we're going to have a much more, in the fall, we're going to have a much more specific and detailed treatment of meta-analysis findings across the fields of criminal, juvenile, and victim services.
Thank you, Dr. Wyrick. This question is for the both of you, Dr. Wyrick and Ms. Stubbs. How do programs that are reviewed and included in Crimesolutions.gov cover costs of the evaluation?
The programs in Crime Solutions, the program profiles will include information where we have it about the cost of the program, and the cost benefits of the program where we have it. But they may not cover cost. Generally, the program profile information and what's up on Crimesolutions.gov is not going to include information about the cost of doing the evaluation itself, if I understood the question correctly.
Yes, that was it. Ms. Dobbs, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Dr. Wyrick covered it.
Okay. This next question is for Alison Thorns. How do I get more information on the justice reinvestment strategy you mentioned?
Thanks, Vicki. You know, justice reinvestment, as I mentioned, is a lot of states are quite interested in it. So we've actually done quite a few different reports and briefs and that sort of thing on justice reinvestment. A couple of resources on our website that I'd like to point you out to. We did do a webinar in December, just this past year, on justice reinvestment and recidivism reduction strategies. That's one resource where you can hear from some legislative staff as well as experts in the field. There is also, we have a legis brief on the topic, the principles report I mentioned, and then at Legislative Summit this year, it's the second week in August in Chicago, we are having a session on it, and we expect to have a great panel for that as well.
Thank you, Alison. This next question is for Dr. Wyrick. How do programs get recommended for inclusion in Crimesolutions.gov?
Sure. We have a couple of ways. First, we have a process where we're always sort of scanning the literature that's being published. So new publications, new studies that are published, we try to catch those as they come out. We also, of course, being here in Office of Justice Programs, we have information about evaluations that might be funded by our National Institute of Justice or our Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And so we look to those sources. We look to our subject matter experts to recommend programs based on the literature and the evidence behind them. And then finally, people can nominate programs right from the website. At the top right-hand corner of the website, there is a link there's a button you can push to nominate a program. And what we require in that nomination is that there's information about the program itself, but also information about the evaluation of that program. You know, it's too tempting for some folks. They can't resist getting out there and trying to market their program to us and that kind of thing. But we're really all about what the evidence says. And so if it's got a strong enough evaluation, then we'll put it into the review process and get it into the queue.
Well, thank you. That question will wrap it up for today. Again, we'd like to thank our speakers, Alison Thorns and Dr. Phelan Wyrick and Ms. Amy Stobbs. Another big thank you to our partner, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and to you, our participants. For more information on this webinar, contact Alison Thorns at allison.lawrence@ncsouth.org or 303-364-7700. For additional information on the topics discussed today, please visit NCSL's Correction and Sentencing webpage and OJP's Crimesolutions.gov and Diagnostic Center. An archive of this program, including PowerPoint slides and links to resources mentioned in the presentation, will be made available on NCSL's website in about 1 week. Again, thank you.